So good afternoon. It is 12 o'clock. I'm Angela Bellegarde, and I'm the Indigenous Reconciliation Strategy Manager for our Kids Network. I'm coming to you here from Treaty 22 territory. And I hope all of you, by the end of this session, will have a better understanding about what treaty territory you're on and where to find out if you don't. So let's start today in a good way by really acknowledging the land. So I have a piece of Mother Earth with me in my hand, and feel free to have a piece, if you have it available to you, to hold in your hand to remind us that we are all connected by the land. I always like to look out a window, and I encourage you to really reflect as I say the land acknowledgement on the land, but either in your mind's eye or by looking out a window if it's available to you. And just take a moment to really think about what a land acknowledgement is about and what the land means to you. Today, I'd like to just acknowledge that we are all here with open hearts in a safe environment to learn more and to really learn more about the truth of Indigenous people and to move reconciliation forward. And land acknowledgements are one way to do that. So we are on the land of many, traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the neutral people, as well as the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, also known as the Iroquois Confederacy, made up of 6 nations. I am on Treaty 22 territory, and Halton is made up of at least 5 treaties. And I'd like to acknowledge the treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. And because we are all in Halton on treaty land, we are all treaty people. So today, let's be mindful, think about the land, because while we acknowledge the people of the land, we really are acknowledging what the gifts are that Mother Earth has given us and the Creator has bestowed upon us. And one of those things is that we need to remember that we're all connected by this land as human beings, and that we're all here to make this land better and to be keepers of the land. So with that, I hope you all a great workshop. I'm here to answer your questions. And remember, it is the land that connects us all. And therefore we must acknowledge that and be great keepers of the land. Okay, feel free if anybody has heard a land acknowledgement like that before, or if you're used to hearing something different. Something perhaps like the land on which we live and work is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the neutral people, and the Huron-Wendat. Use the chat feature to tell me which one, mine or the second one where I've read it off. The second one, yep. Second, yeah. Well, great. Everybody's typically putting in the second one. And so, yeah, that is how we usually hear it. And this is kind of the subtitle of what this workshop is about, is getting beyond the one breath land acknowledgement. Sometimes I call it going beyond the plaque in the lobby. And don't get me wrong, the plaque in the lobby to me is very important as a First Nations person. It does show me that there's somebody who's taking care to put that plaque there, and that it's meaning there's somebody has understood that there's meaning to acknowledge that land. So it is important to me. But what I think we can do, all of us can do better, is doing that opening meetings or speaking about land. And that's what we're here about today, to learn more about it, about what a land acknowledgement isn't, what it is, and when you can do it. And hopefully, I can answer any questions that you might have, or if you're courageous enough to try one, happy to hear you. So Rand, I'm going to ask you to advance the slide. So again, those are our big ideas today. What they are not, why we include them, which I've actually just covered, but we'll review it again, and what are the components of a land acknowledgement. So let's try understanding by what they are not. And Rand, I'll ask you to advance again, and I really appreciate your help. So some of you may have seen this before, but I love starting with it because it kind of sets us all in a good space. So I'm going to ask Randa to start the video. A couple minutes.
Hello. First, I'd like to remind everyone here to turn off your cell phones. Before we begin this evening's performance, we would like to acknowledge that this theater stands on territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Petun First Nations. We are also mindful of broken covenants and the need to make right with all our relations. And now, please enjoy the show.
Sorry, hello? Sorry. Excuse me, should we go?
Excuse me?
Oh, no, I just mean if we're on someone else's land, shouldn't we leave?
Oh, no. The theater is here now. We'd just like to acknowledge whose land it is.
I'm sorry, I'm so confused. So if we're on someone else's land, shouldn't we do something about that? Or
hopefully we'll enjoy the performance.
oh, okay, so some of the money from the ticket sales of the show are going to the Indigenous communities?
Well, no.
A portion of them?
No, the ticket sales go to the theater.
So is the money from the bottled water sold here going to the First Nations for clean drinking water? Or?
Oh, no, that money goes to Nestle. They're a sponsor.
I'm so sorry. I'm so confused. So whose land are we on? What are we doing?
It's a dialogue.
How are we making right?
Well, there's a plaque you can read in the lobby.
I don't understand.
I'm getting a message from the stage manager that we need to begin the show, so please take your seats. But have a good time.
But
good night.
So sit down. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the show.
You're on mute, Angela.
Thank you. Using the chat feature, tell me, or hands up, have you seen that before? Use some words that talk about what stood out for you in that particular video. And who here? Yeah, so let's start with that. Anybody? What stood out? Okay, so you guys have been very honest in your chat, and I really appreciate that. I want to tell you that if you want to access this again, it is the Baroness von Sketch Troupe from CBC. It is available on our Kids Network Indigenous Literacy Resources pages if you want to review it or use it again. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I think that one thing I see here is about the authenticity. There's a lot to unpack here. And I hope by the end of it that we all are going to get beyond just checking a box and really have an authentic one. Very much so this was impersonal, no understanding of why they were doing it. And there was an apology in there. We need to make right. And left really wondering what we're supposed to do if we're on somebody else's land. Like, whose land is it? Well, listen, land acknowledgements, first of all, are not an apology. So I know that some of you are very comfortable doing them, and that's why you're here. So we're not going to have a thumbs up or thumbs down to the next question. What we are going to do is go to the next slide. And we're going to talk about those best practice components. So round again with the click.
There you go.
Excellent. What people often ask is when are we supposed to do them? And do we have to do them all the time at every meeting? And my answer to that, and again, remember that these are my opinions. My answer to this is absolutely. And don't ask the Indigenous person in the room to do this, because if you know there is an Indigenous person in the room, if they offer, absolutely. But most Indigenous person already have greeted the day in their traditional way, and most who have traditional teachings, understanding, but you know, it really is an intrinsic part of many of us to acknowledge the land in some way as we wake. So do every day, and do it every time you have a meeting, because it's not really just a checkbox. It's really, if you want it to be authentic, what I'm asking you to do is to really reflect upon what this land means to you, and what are your obligations to share that land. And some of that obligation is why you're here today, is to understand the truth and to make room for reconciliation in your life. So that is absolutely it. But yes, you do a land acknowledgement every time you have a meeting. And sometimes I'll just, if I'm in a non-Indigenous or a meeting where this isn't something that has happened, I'll just say I'm in Treaty 22 territory. And it doesn't matter whether it's an Indigenous focus meeting or not. It is still, to me, important to recognize that we're all connected by this land. And because I feel so strongly about that, I do, whenever I have that opportunity in meetings, to model that behavior. And I would ask all of you to take up that as well, and be brave and courageous to acknowledge what treaty land you're on anytime you have the opportunity to do that, and bring it up in meetings. So, but what we're really here to do is learn how to do one. And I want, again, to say that this is not an apology. You don't have to give your entire history of how you came to Canada. What you want to do is to really understand what the land means to you and acknowledge it. Acknowledge the people of it, and you need to know that, but really understand now what this land means to you. Randa. So these are the best case components, and we're going to talk about them in some detail here. Before I start, any questions? Does anybody want to put anything in the chat? Because I'm not sure if anybody can just put their hand up and ask. Randa, do we have that? Can people ask a question in this format?
They can unmute and ask questions.
Okay, you can also do. Sometimes with these platforms you can't do that. So does anybody have a question? Open now. This is a safe space, and I hope we all are respectful of each other as we're all learning that this is safe. There's no judgment here. Okay, so somebody's asking about research to define what treaty land we are. Absolutely, and we're going to cover that right away. Anything else? Anything about that reflection about the land? Have I made it clear that the most important thing to do is to make it authentic and heartfelt? And we do that by understanding what that land means to us. Understanding, and that's what my first point is. Because as I've been doing this work, I find that people say, I want it to be authentic. I don't want it to be a checkbox. I don't want it to be something that we read. I want to make sure I'm doing it in a manner that is respectful. And I want to say that when you're going about your work in truth and reconciliation, if that is the attitude that you're taking, you will be welcomed, and you will be what you're doing from that place of a heartfelt, good, respectful will be recognized by Indigenous people. And if you've tripped up, nobody's going to shame you. We will say that we might make a joke about it, but we use humor often to show people that you're part of the group and we respect it. But when you come at these things from a respectful place, you show your courage, we will honor that. And we'll say, hey, next time you might want to do it this way. Hey, you might want to do it that way. You might want to think about this. So I really want to put that and help you find some ease, that when we come at these things with respect and a good heart, and we lead with love, that will be honored. I mean, I can't guarantee it, but I'm pretty sure that that's going to be how it's going to be received. So you need to understand that if you want it to be authentic, you need to know what position you have on this land. And I bet you many of you have not even thought about that. When I first started doing this work, I asked people, do you remember seeing that tree on Bronte Road? My favorite tree that I pass every day, and acknowledge that over 100 years it's been standing there. Last night I was at a function, an Indigenous function at the museum, town of Oakville, at the museum. And I got to pray under a tree that was at least 120 years old. Absolutely amazing. And be near the water. So I need you to really think about, what does this land mean to you? And how are we all connected by this land? The other component is definitely acknowledge the reason why you're gathered today. And you may want to speak about some current events, right? And really make it come home. I like to, and I didn't do it this today because I know what was going on, but recognize that there's generations here before us and generations to come. And this is a key part of who we are as Indigenous people, that we always think about our ancestors who are watching over us, who are supporting us, and who shared this land with many and continue to share it. But those generations have allowed us to be here, and it has allowed me to do this work and to be here and to talk to all of you. So we really have respect for those generations. But we also want to remember that there are generations to come. And if we are not good stewards of this land, that we continue to destroy the land, we are not leaving this land for the generations to come. So I hope what you're taking away is really the importance of this land. I think the Japanese call it forest bathing, where you go into the land, and we've been dealing with so much mental health with all the COVID crisis that a lot of psychologists are saying, go for a walk, go out into the, hey, Indigenous people have been doing that since time immemorial. And that's what I'm asking you to do, to really understand what the land means to you. Is it a place of solace? For me, it's a place where, you know, there's medicines there. I take medicines and I give back medicines. So again, this is how we get to that authenticness and understanding our positionality there. And when we are truly connected to the land, we recognize that we have a whole future, 7 generations. We do things for 7 generations, remembering that we want to keep this land for generations in the future. And that's one of our teachings as Indigenous people. So I encourage you to think about that. And then acknowledge the First Nation of the treaty you're at. So let's get down to some brass tacks. Rhonda, any questions about that? Any thoughts? Okay, please feel free. I'd like this to be as interactive as possible. I know it's Friday afternoon, but I'm very open to hearing what you have to say and your thoughts, because I want everybody to walk away today with some tools in their tool belt and to feel more confident to be able to do one and put your hand up at any time, or even to say, hey, we didn't do a lot of acknowledgement, let's do one now, I'm happy to do it. And you just whip it off without having to write it down. Okay, so here's one of the questions that you asked about how do we know whose land we're on. The first thing I want to say is that it really is important for you to try to get the names correct of whose land you're on. You know, and they are not easy sometimes. I'm a Cree person from Treaty 4 area in southern Saskatchewan, Plains Cree and Assiniboine mix and settler mix. So sometimes some of these words are pretty hard. The Anishinaabe words and how they pronounce it in a different dialect that I'm used to hearing can be difficult. But we are in the golden age of information. And what that means is there's not only an app for that, which we'll show right away, but you're also able to go onto YouTube and hear how to pronounce Haudenosaunee or Haudenosaunee, as some people say. You are able to go on and learn how to say, you know, hello in Anishinaabe, which is the language of many people here, or Mohawk, or Cayuga. This is the time to learn about the land of the people and their language. YouTube, the internet, do it. I did it. I'm not ashamed to say it. I wanted to make sure I said it right. And I'm still, as a visitor on this land, learning about the Anishinaabe, learning about the Mississaugas. And man, I had a great evening last night with Guima Laforme and Elder Peter Schuler from the Mississaugas. and learned even more about what this area and this treaty area means to them and their respect for the water that we were near. Okay, so let's go on to what is this app? Randa, is there another slide? There is the app right there. And it's called Whose Land? If you, so you can get it for your phone. You just type in where you are and you can select treaty area or territorial area and it'll tell you. There's also a place on this app where you can hear people doing land acknowledgements. So if you're kind of not sure, there you go. There's some right there. And this app is available for both Androids and for Apple phones. But if you're at your laptop, you can go to native_land.ca. And guess what? You don't have to write any of this down because we have made it nice and easy for you at ourkidsnetwork.ca/Indigenous resources. We have a really great section on our web page where you can go and get all of this information and help out with territorial announcements. We have one whole section. So please make sure you go and find out. And there's lots of maps out there. If you go to the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations website, web pages, they have a whole section on how they would like to see a land acknowledgement done. And they have a whole map around their treaties and treaty areas and lots of information there. And as you probably know, Darren Wabanga is coming to do a workshop for our Kids Network and all our partners and friends next week. So always lots of opportunities to learn more. So I'd encourage you, there's an app for that. You can get apps in language as well for your phone. My daughter, when she was young, would just sit in the back and practice her words by going through the apps. So yeah, this is the time. Next slide, Randa. And there it is. Just want to point out, Randa, you can step in anytime. Randa is our communications coordinator at our Kids Network, and she does so much for us. But she makes sure that the blog is published, and you'll see that on the right. And we've just has 2 series of blogs published recently that you might want to go look in honor of National Indigenous History Month. But you'll see here that we do have that whole section, and we update it frequently. The thing I want to say about this, our web page here, is that it's not comprehensive. There's lots of comprehensive Indigenous education portals. What we have done here at our Kids Network is make sure to have a credible and curated sites for your needs based on what I have heard in my work with our partners and member organizations, and certainly land acknowledgements comes up time and time again. I was at a community function on the weekend, and a city councilor asked for help on how to, a video is nice to play at the beginning of meetings, but they want to be able to speak it. And I couldn't agree more. So it's credible, it's there. The Baroness Van sketch is there as well. Next slide. Let's get back to what these are. Okay. So we have the 4 components there. We want it to be authentic and heartfelt. We want to acknowledge the reason we're gathered, and we want to recognize generations before and generations to come. Acknowledge those First Nations and the treaty of this territory, or whatever territory we're in. And then you can, in a way to elevate it, you can include a call to action. And I haven't done that today, but the call to action may be like, and I encourage everybody today to read at least 10 calls to action. Or, depending on what you're meeting, if you're meeting on for youth, you do a call to action. And let's remember every day the reason that we are here, which is to assist the most vulnerable among us. So just, you might want to add something to elevate it and to engage people. And to me, that's a heartfelt and authentic land acknowledgement. It is beyond the one breath acknowledgement.